I want to thank you for joining us. Again, this is the first year that we're having a National Office Speaker Series. The first one in September was great. We had about 200 folks on to hear about student athlete mental health issues. We did 2 sessions. The first one was for administrators and athletic trainers and coaches to hear about those concerns. The second one was directed directly to student athletes. And that was great. In fact, that one went so well with the student athletes that they've asked for an encore presentation. So next Sunday night, next Sunday at this time, we're going to have student athlete mental health for students, 7 o'clock Central Time. So again, if you have an ASA or a SAC or any kind of student group that you want to be on there, invite them. The registration's out there, and they can get on next Sunday. Tonight is really kind of neat. We have a few topics that we're going to go through over the course of the year that are focused on administrators. And this one, we are really fortunate to have someone that's been there, that's done that has the expertise. Jeremy Capo is a assistant vice president for project development. He works at Mammoth Sports Construction, so he's got the expertise, but more importantly, he's here with a different frame. He's here with the frame of having been on campus in that seat, that athletic director seat. He was at former small college AD, Division II, NJCAA, and in 2019, he was the NACTA Under Armour Athletic Director of the Year. I wanted to kind of put it out there so that you all understand you've got someone that's been in that position, that understands what is needed, and is now in a working position on the other side. So he's seen it from all angles. So Jeremy, thank you so much. Do you want to kick off and say a few opening remarks, my friend?
Yeah. First, I just would like to know what your definition of expert is. You called me an expert, so but no, I'm excited for the opportunity to just visit today and answer some questions because, like you mentioned, I have been in those shoes and in their desk seat or their chair. And trying to navigate some things, and then to be on this side of the house now and see it from a different angle and different lens, it does allow for some exciting learning opportunities.
Well, I tell you what I think we might do real quick, and to our audience, please know that as we go through this, it's just a dialogue between 2 people, but you are more than welcome to use that chat, send questions, send thoughts, any ideas that you have that you want addressed, please let us know. And know this, there's no real closure in any of these speaker series sessions that we're going to have this year. They're all the beginning of a conversation. So the first one about student athlete mental health, just the beginning. The people that we bring, such as Jeremy, they're there for you as a colleague, as a friend. They want to give back to the athletic profession. It's not a sales pitch. It's not anything like that. It's hey, I want to talk through this. I need some guidance. You've been there. Tell me about this. So please know, this is just the beginning of a relationship and a conversation. And as we go through tonight, feel free to type things in. I do want to try this. Again, it's the first time we've done it. This is a poll just to get a pulse of those of you in the room. So tell me if you can see this, if you can see this poll, go ahead and answer those 3 questions, and I will share the results when we get it. So if those of you watching can see this poll, Justin, Mike, Robert, Sean, if you can see it, let me know. Go ahead and answer those. Yeah, there we go. Go ahead and try to answer those questions if you can. The first one is asking about if you're in a campaign or anything related to facilities. And again, just wanting to get a finger on the pulse here. We're not going to hold you to it. One of you is looking at indoor court sports, some baseball, softball batting cages, some outdoor field sports. It looks like a lot of stuff is on the docket. That's lacrosse and football and soccer. Ooh, the outdoor track facility. I got a tale about that one. Yeah. And when it comes to being in this role, I see two of you were kind of involved in this process. One of you was not involved at all. One was absolutely involved. Boy, look at all those facilities. Jeremy, are you seeing those results yet?
I'm not seeing the results.
Okay.
Where's the poll here?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just showing me that I can answer it.
Let me see here. And gentlemen, thank you.
I cannot answer it. My opinion doesn't count on the poll.
You are. Let me see.
Which is
the facilities we're looking at: indoor court sports. 75% of you are looking at that. One is looking at a multi-purpose space. That's like wrestling or maybe an indoor track facility. Two of you are looking at baseball, softball, batting cages. Three of you are looking at outdoor field sports. Two of you are looking at an outdoor track. One of you is looking at something that might get overlooked sometimes: weight room, sports medicine clinic, locker room. One of you is looking at athletics offices, maybe a study hall area. And one of you is looking at the larger campus. So that's talking like residence halls, cafeteria, classrooms, maybe a religious facility. All right. I'll type those results as Jeremy talks through some of his. Oh, here we go.
Oh, there you go.
There we go. You all are helping me learn. Thank you for that, gentlemen. Those are our results. All right. And this will be recorded so you can share it later. I'll probably have it up hopefully by the end of this next week. All right. Now, when it comes to what we are going to talk about tonight, I've got one other thing, one other poll here, and it's not a poll for questions. It's just to walk us through All right. So the discussion: how can athletics lead transformational campus change via facilities? Now, these are the topics that Jeremy is going to walk us through. Getting the right people at the table. What's the role of the student if there is one? Some practical and legal concerns. How do we begin to establish priorities? Should we include non-athletics uses? How do we do that collectively for campus and the community and academics? How do you engage boosters besides just asking for funding? What are missteps that he's seen in the past from either his seat or his new seat as a business partner? And then finally, we'll get to some questions and some follow-up. So Jeremy, we're about to turn it over to you. Walk us through, my friend.
All right. So really just to kind of start, first and foremost, I think when you start these facilities upgrades or new builds, it's important to realize that you don't know what you don't know, right? And you know what you know. So when you start off putting your vision and your idea to the table, where I think where I've seen folks do very, very well in these is starting off with the big picture, right? Your master plan, your strategic plan. Do you have a strategic plan? Does your master plan align for your facilities with that strategic plan? Building that out early and often, and it's a living. Those things are living documents. They change every year. They change. They can change every quarter depending on funding and those types of things. But realistically, those documents, those work sessions with your people on your campus go a long way to moving the needle, to building the excitement, to getting people excited, to come to the table to help with these facilities projects. Getting the right people at the table. Obviously, you need to know who's in your corner and who's going to help swing the bat for you, if you will, as far as working with budgets. A lot of these, you see the CFO at the table. Obviously, they know where the money's at. They know how to move the money. They know how to make the money stretch. Obviously, presidents on campuses are extremely important, extremely vital. Nothing happens on a campus, right, without our presidents. Board of trustees, you need to have your board of trustees, their blessing. And that's at the 30,000. As you get down into it and you start to build these out, coaches, it's important, I think, that as you go through and build these master plans, these facility strategic plans, to make sure that your coaches at least have a say, at least have their voice, an opportunity for their voice to be heard. That happens really through kind of a SWOT analysis, is what we've worked through, is what, when I was sitting in the AD chair, we worked through a lot of those SWOT analysis just to flush everything out. Like, let's get everything on the table. The baseball coach may think it's a waste, but your golf coach thinks it's a must-have. And so sitting down and getting everybody at the table and flushing everything out is vital as you're building these plans out. Why that's important is because as you start to move through these plans, you don't want to build something or fund something that you're ahead of the game on, and now you're going to have to either retrofit it, or you're going to have to change course or change your direction. Some of my experience was most recently at my last institution. They had built a new kind of building that housed the athletic department. It housed athletic training. There was some aerobics rooms. There was a small weight room, things like that. And then we had really grown. We outgrew the space probably before we even opened the doors. And because of the way the architects and everyone designed the space, when we finally found enough money to go back and renovate it, we had to sink more money into changing the space that was just built 8 to 10 years ago. And so realistically, that's a waste of funds. Like, you could put that $100,000 into something else to really move the needle. But so it's important to flush every single thing out. I think that you can have students at the table, but I think realistically, your coaches, your athletic trainers, faculty athletic representatives, those folks, I think, give you a big enough picture as to where you need to go and how you need to begin to build your plan out. So lights, locker rooms, you name it, A to Z. You want as many people as possible to get all their big ideas out on the table. It doesn't mean they're all going to happen. It doesn't mean some's going to happen sooner than later. But ultimately, at the end of the day, when you have multiple folks at the table, you allow them to have their voice heard. You allow them input, and when the plan starts to come to fruition, that's extra excitement. They can see it. They had a part in it. They're helping with, especially on these small campuses, right? They're helping contact our alums to get them back to the table to possibly make some donations and things like that. So two
things in support. For those of you with us tonight, two things in support of what Jeremy just told you. In my previous life on campus, an institution I was with sunk a lot of money into renovating a track facility in concert with a local high school that would allow us to share the space and work out a schedule to use it. The one group of people that was not ever in any conversations were our 4 track coaches. So when the facility was finished and there was a big kickoff event, everyone showed up, lots of fun, lots of energy. Then the head coach pulled a few of us aside and said, "It's great, we love it, we can't ever host a meet here because we don't have the rail that you have to have for the meets that we were going to have. And it's not one of those easy fixes. In fact, so they renovated a whole facility and couldn't ever host a college level meet there just because of that one detail.
Yeah.
The second thing they did is when they built a soccer stadium, to Jeremy's point about the student voice being important, maybe not decision making, but at least heard, is one of Jeremy's colleagues at Mammoth was behind it and helped a lot with having listening sessions to share thoughts and ideas and discussions, with the understanding that those groups were just putting forward discussions and having a good talk. It wasn't any type of decision-making body, and they knew that. And that was important to get across to the group that, hey, we're listening to you. We might not go with it, but we're going to hear it. We're going to consider it and think on it. So that was right in line. Thank you.
Yeah, the students, I mean, I think sometimes you get into the administrator chair or you get in the decision-making chair, and you think that students maybe want all these things, or, you know, they want this big fancy lobby area outside the locker room. And as you get into those conversations, they'd maybe rather just have a nicer locker room, not an actual lobby. So it does allow you to kind of get a little bit better of a pulse on really kind of what moves the needle with the student athletes. Again, they're not making decisions by any stretch of the imagination, but they are providing you feedback and maybe steering you in a direction or keeping you out of a situation that really would be, for lack of better terms, a waste of funds used.
Jeremy, why don't you tell us some of the experience, whether it's from the seat you had on campus or currently, about some of the practical concerns, the legal concerns that you might have seen groups run into as they're trying to establish a facility or renovate or come up with some kind of capital campaign.
Yeah, you know, I think that some of us, you know, older facilities, those types of things, kind of get grandfathered into these newer, they get grandfathered in. So when codes change, when ADA regulations and things like that change, our older facilities, they end up being kind of grandfathered in. They're in the, if you don't touch it, you're fine. But if you touch it, you need to go in and you need to go back and take care of it. So it's always important, obviously, to have the right, you know, your facilities folks. They're going to be the ones, your architecture engineers. Some of you have those on campus. Some of you have folks that you work with in partner. They're going to understand, they're going to know all the codes and things like that as far as those regulations are concerned. I spent some time at an institution, and we had so many of these different planning sessions, and really we didn't have the right people at the table. And we had some coaches from some male sports at the table, and they were very, very, very vocal on how big they wanted their locker rooms and how big they wanted this space and that space. And then when it came down to it and we started looking at the plans from a Title IX perspective and a female student athlete perspective, we were really negligent in that, in providing the same opportunities, the same space, the same size for them. And after that, kind of, we brought those coaches in that weren't represented initially. It kind of slapped us in the face, and we ended up going back to the drawing board to make sure that, hey, yeah, we were just listening to the coaches that were sitting at the table, but ultimately we need to make sure that our female student athletes have a better, as far as I'm concerned, we erred on the side of let's make it bigger, right? Let's make sure that they realize and they understand that they are extremely important to our programs and our athletic department. So we went on the side of erring on larger spaces for them. So you can get in a bind in a hurry with a lot of that stuff. So it's always important to make sure that when you're building these things out, you take into consideration those Title IX ramifications that come that could possibly come from not making sure your facilities are taken care of on the female student athlete side.
I love, Jeremy, I love hearing about the facilities management folks because much like in the world of athletics, this past year really showed us we all know that athletic trainers and what they do is so valuable and important to the student experience. And it really came through this year because their work was pushed to the forefront. Well, facilities management folks on campus, they're the pulse of campus. They keep things going the way they're supposed to. And I tell you, if you can include them on the front end, it seems like that might make for a smoother working relationship overall, as opposed to realizing that, hey, something's not right, so let's call in our friends at facilities management to come fix it. Well, if you loop them in at the beginning, that creates a whole different dynamic, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, I mean, and and if you don't get them in soon enough, essentially what happens is they end up at the table at some point. And if it's during the construction phase of it, what I've seen is they'll come in and they'll say, hey, we need this, or we need to add that. Well, the contract's drawn up, and now all of a sudden you're looking at dollars, right? You're looking at change orders to get the things organized or inserted into the project. That was probably overlooked. So you don't want to miss that. You don't want to throw extra money at something that you could have easily taken a good hard look at and had the right people at the table on the front end.
That's great advice. Let's go on to establishing priorities, and that's not just within the department. A lot of our schools really serve a purpose to the larger campus, and they also serve a purpose in their communities. A lot of our schools are kind of the heartbeat of the community. So how can we make sure that we establish priorities in line with that?
Yeah. It's a lot of what you see or what you're probably accustomed to is academics first, athletics second. As far as you get on some of these campuses and academics gets first dibs on some of the space. Athletics second, community third, and I think that's pretty standard when you're putting those priorities together, obviously, and building these facilities. Some of the things that are overlooked is, okay, if we do let the community come in and use it, is there going to be enough space? Are we going to have to move folks out from their normal time? And when we do that, if we do have to move people, do we have an opportunity to get them in someplace else at a different location, a different facility that we have, an auxiliary facility, those types of things like that. So really, as you're sitting down and you're building these priorities, what we're starting to see, which is everyone has their COVID money that they are trying to be creative with how they're spending it. We're seeing a lot of folks use that money to build educational spaces that outdoor, right? Because when you're outdoor, you can distance. You don't have to have your mask on, those types of things, depending on where you're at. But we're seeing folks be really creative with creating outdoor spaces that they can then double up and use for, a game event, or depending on the location and how close it is to your stadium or your track or your football field or whatever. So really, when you're establishing those priorities, it's important to put together and have those. You got to have your academic folks aligned with you at the table, because I think again, letting them have their voice, letting them have their say really allows them to feel like they've been heard, because we've all been in those situations where it's hairy on campus because the academic side of the house doesn't think the athletic side of the house gets it, and vice versa. So bringing those folks in, allowing them the opportunity. Hey, we're building this space. You can run your PE courses here, or you can run your physical education or your exercise science labs here. Those types of things really helps put together a sound plan and establish those priorities when you move forward, when your project's complete.
Now, Jeremy, you were talking about our friends who are faculty members and maybe want to use the space, the PE courses. Um, I've seen a push recently to have in major construction a educational component such as a classroom. Maybe it's an
Yeah.
ILE, you know, the high tech space learning classroom. Is that still going on?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. I mean, you're seeing those spaces built, and then they're multi-purpose. Right? So they're an academic classroom from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. and then they turn into film room, right? And it's a film room from 2 p.m. or 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. so that you can get all your folks in there. So those academic spaces serve multiple arenas, right? There now you have a team meeting room. Now you as the administrator can get all your coaches in a space. It just serves so many different capacities and so many different opportunities for educational purposes, for your team purposes, whether that's film, whether that's team bonding meetings. I've seen our previous as the director of athletics, we had two educational classrooms that were ours that we scheduled out. And I'm telling you, they were used nonstop, and everything and anything was in those facilities or in those spaces all day, every day.
Very good to know. And just to let our friends know who are in the audience, the little notes that we're typing in the chat are just something I do when I teach classes. As I hear things from Jeremy, we'll put our thoughts in there. After the session, Jeremy and I will compare, make sure that what I'm hearing is right, and we'll put that into a nice little handout and send that to you all later this week to say, hey, here's our stream of consciousness thoughts about the subject. And if you want to reach out, please do. There'll be a little list for you to follow along with. So we'll keep going. Jeremy, this is great. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Non-athletic. Okay. Now talk about the side that you really know well. When you're trying to fund these, besides the COVID funds, and we're being creative, when you engage the boosters, when you engage the community members or the business partners that want to help, there's an art to that, especially now. A lot of research has come out recently since COVID, and the dynamic of giving has changed, and there seems to be a groundswell of wanting to make a difference beyond just giving a cash or a check. There's an involvement that they want. There's a connection to the program or the students or the coaches. There's a human relationship part there. Could you talk about that? Maybe what you've seen work or maybe not work in the past?
Absolutely, yeah. So I think there's probably two sides to this, right? You have, if you're fortunate, and my second spot is in athletics, we were very fortunate to have the booster come to us and say, I'm doing this. I'm building a stadium. I'm funding a football program. I'm funding a band. I'm doing it. And here's the money. Let's go to work, right? Or you're on the other side, right? You're sitting at your desk. You have all these great ideas, right? We need a stadium. We need a new arena, and you're thinking, well, how are we going to make this happen? I think we all know first and foremost that it comes down to relationships, right? And people need to know that you care, that they can trust you, and that your heart or your passion is in really creating a unique, a great first-class experience for student athletes. And so when you have those relationships, obviously sitting down and having those conversations are needed. Otherwise, you're not going to move the needle. Having your plan in place prior to those meetings is definitely beneficial. A cup of coffee saying, oh, I think we want to do this, or I think we're trying to do that. Obviously it'll get the wheels turning, and maybe it's a seed that you're planting. But when you can come back to your donor, your booster that you're going to make your ask to, and you have an actual plan that obviously is well thought out. You have some pictures maybe to go with it, some renderings, because you're that far along in the process, and really show them how they can make a difference and make an impact, right? This isn't science. This isn't anything that folks don't already know. But that we've seen that move the needle more than anything. What happens then is you get, again, this is all over the map here with some of those. Some of them really want to be involved. Yeah, I'll write you a check today, but right, I want this or I want that. So understanding what you can and cannot maybe promise is very critical. If you're at an institution where there's a lot of red tape to get facilities naming rights, you need to know that going in, and maybe have something in your back pocket that you can present that, okay, well, I know you want your name on this, we can't do that, what if we did a statue or whatever that looks like. But knowing what you can and cannot do as far as your state or your school, when making these asks and making these promises, if you will, is very, very important. And then knowing what the donor is really interested in. You may see them at every single football game, but maybe they have a young daughter that's coming down the pipeline and she's really into softball. So engaging them in a softball conversation moves the needle more than their interest in potentially a football or a soccer or something like that. So really that goes back to the relationship piece and having a pulse and kind of knowing, hey, here's our client, our potential donor that we want to ask. Here's where their passion is. Here's where their heart is. Here's where we know that we think that they can benefit or they can help us as well. But then ultimately, it turns into listening, and you need to know and listen kind of where they're coming from and where they think they can help. Then it gets kind of tricky as far as what that ask looks like. Some people may get offended if you ask for too much or if you don't ask for enough. It's such a different, it varies from donor to donor and from institution to institution. But knowing your donor, knowing your booster, and really having a pulse on where they're at, where they can give and help is, I mean, you can't put a large enough emphasis on that.
Jeremy, that's great. Thank you. It's interesting. I've in some of the athletic journals, we've seen stories, maybe not numbers, maybe not measurable, but tales of boosters really recently having an interest in student athlete wellness, and which is great. I saw one of our friends on the poll said that they were looking at I think wellness facilities. It might have, I forget what they said, maybe athletic training or study hall or fueling station type things. That seems to be a growing area of interest of a lot of boosters. It cuts across teams because it benefits all students on campus, all student athletes, possibly even non-athlete students. But could you talk about things that you've seen in that space recently? Anything that has to do with health, wellness?
Yeah.
It seems like an area that's ripe for boosters to really want to make a difference across sports. Some are really dedicated to one particular team, which is great. But for those that want to go across, what does that look like? Have you seen anything in that space?
Absolutely. At my last institution, prior to moving over here to Mammoth, we were in the north, right? And we all know in the north, you got to have indoor space. And if you don't have indoor space, your kids are at a significant disadvantage because they're not going to see a ball in the air until March, right? If they're softball, baseball. So we knew we had a need for an indoor space. We knew we had a need on our campus to create a health and wellness facility with indoor courts for the students because there was no place for them, the general students, to go play basketball or go work out or go run on the treadmill. And so going back to knowing your donor, knowing their passion, kind of knowing where they're at, and what they can do and generate, help generate for you. We approached a physician in town who we knew had an affinity to the college, who we knew obviously was in this wellness space. Mental health was a huge, it really, when we started talking mental health and how we would see with this facility, our student athletes, they would have opportunities to engage and to let some of their, get some of their, oh man, workout. Sorry. But it would allow them to get out, be active, and not sit in their dorm rooms and those types of things. So going to him with, hey, we're going to see this facility completely change our students and give them opportunities that will decrease our mental health issues on campus. Housing was really on board with it because now they weren't in the dorms sitting there all day long being bored. They were getting off some of that energy in the wellness center. So that facility changed the entire campus. It changed the landscape of campus because from a just general student population, now we have a more fit campus because the students they're participating in intramurals and campus recreation, which we didn't have a very large offering prior to that. And then on the athletic side, obviously now our spring sports have the opportunity to be indoors and gain some traction and train at a greater capacity than they were prior to that indoor facility coming on board. So those facilities, I mean, those are game changers across the country. Obviously more up north, it really moves the needle. But it's significantly starting to be something that we're starting to see all over campuses.
That can't be said too loudly about the need to address mental health, emotional health, physical health for student athletes, but also all of campus. So that's a great move. That's a great move. Let's talk about something that hopefully in hindsight we can look back and laugh on, but talk about some of the missteps that you've seen, whether it's, and of course without disclosing who,
right,
but
yep.
From your chair behind the AD desk, and maybe in your current role, what do you see? Some institutions might have gone down one path and realized that they needed to go down a different path or take a different approach. How about some of the missteps that you've seen throughout your career?
Yeah, focusing really on, just before we get into the missteps, I was very fortunate and blessed to work for a president that was very forward thinking. And when I took my first AD job, I arrived on campus to 6 sports. We have a turf field, there's football lines on it, there's soccer lines on it, there's goalposts. But every conversation he told me was, I'm never going to have football or soccer on this campus when I'm the president, Jeremy. I said, that's fine with me. Like, I'm here to be the AD for the programs that we offer. I want to do a really good job with them. But then he continues on and says, but I won't always be the president here. And so we had the opportunity to do this right. And so the next president that comes in after me, they may want to add these sports. So because we have the opportunity, we want to do it right. We want to do it the first time right. And we don't want to retrofit. We don't want to chase money. I put it in there. And so, yeah, I get questions every day. What are we doing and why are we doing it? But ultimately it was the right step because I knew I wouldn't be the president here. So that kind of goes into the missteps where you attack these projects or these facilities through a microscope, and you don't really get big picture. You don't really, like we talked about early on, flushing everything out. Like what would we need if money was no object? What would we put in this facility? What would it look like? Earlier I touched on we didn't have the right coach at the table, and when that coach was able to come in and get a good look at the plans that we thought we were doing really good on, the comment was, this is unacceptable. I will not have my team in this size of locker room when the team that's the same size as us has a bigger locker room. You guys missed the boat. It's unacceptable. So really, when you're planning these things out, I mean, it's important to just go rehash them over and over and over. And I've said in this chair now, in the professional world, and I understand, like, people, we just want to get it right. We just need to make sure if I've heard it once, I've heard it a million times. We have one shot to do this, and we need to make sure we do it right. And so that's, I think, when you go and you're engaging as many people as you can in your department, you're getting, like we discussed earlier, some feedback from the student athletes, because maybe your vision or where you're going and you're trying to move the needle doesn't move the needle. And granted, it's like Robert said, they're not making the decision. They're allowing you to see, like, hey, this doesn't move the needle for us. So I talked a little bit about having to retrofit a facility and spend $100,000 to move a wall. That if we would have been thinking big picture long term, we would have never had to move that wall. We would have spent that money on the front end. It probably would have cost us, a third of the cost, a third of the price to retrofit it. But I think the most common misstep is you don't get outside the box enough. You don't think big picture enough. How many times I used to be an official, right? And you show up to these places and you're in a closet with the dust mop and the Clorox and they're like, hey, change, So I think the biggest missteps is not getting outside the box. It's thinking with thinking small, not big picture, long term. What I've seen, or what I love about what I'm able to do now, is we're able to help people get to that, build their vision out. And it's as simple as, well, do you think you're ever going to have lacrosse? Right? Oh yeah, maybe one day we're in an area where it's an emerging sport. Okay, well, when we're doing this, let's add this little tiny bit. It doesn't affect the cost tremendously at this point. But when you do add lacrosse, you're ready to rock and roll. You don't have to change anything. You don't have to add anything. It's there. You're going. You're moving the needle. That, I think, is huge. Is you've got to get outside the box. You've got to think big picture, because if you think, oh, we're just going to build a new football stadium, well, maybe long term, maybe that saves you initially on the front end, that the problem that you have is solved. But then you want to add track, or you want to add lacrosse, or you want to add soccer. So it just allows you, when you have those bigger picture conversations, to flush everything out and put it in a master plan or put it in a strategic plan, so that and going back to the president that I worked for at my first job as the AD, I mean, he was that guy. He wasn't going to waste any money. We had one shot. We were going to do it right. And he was thinking long term, right? He was close to retirement. He didn't think that he was ever going to, or he knew he wasn't ever going to add football or soccer, but he didn't put the institution in a situation where if they ever wanted to go back and add those programs, now they're having to spend extra money or more money to get that done.
I tell you what, Jeremy, as you were talking, that we called this leading transformational change on campus through facilities. And I realized this isn't just physical structural change. What you just said about thinking bigger, and when you are going after that big time facility, or even if it's not a big time facility, by including as many different sports as are necessary, you just change the interpersonal relationships of your department.
Yeah.
Because think about our friends that are in Olympic sports, and how oftentimes they feel as though their voices aren't heard, whether it's coaches or student athletes, or that their needs aren't met, and that they're an afterthought, which they're not. By having them at the table and by thinking of their needs, thinking big, thinking outside the box, and including them when you upgrade that facility, and including those sports when you upgrade a facility, you've changed the human relationships, and you've made someone feel important and listened to and part of the department that might have been feeling they were on the fringe. Our athletic trainers, the sports medicine clinics, the that's the kind of stuff that would significantly change someone's morale and motivation. So you're exactly right. That is so great to hear. That's so
Yeah,
helpful.
no, it's a game changer, and then bigger picture, long term, right? You get some of those people in the room, and when they leave, especially if it's a student athlete, I mean, when they leave and they go out and they do big things and great things, their passion and their heart is in what they helped kind of create and build. And so now that's an easier conversation to get them back to and teach them how to give and be a part of fundraising for the future.
Well, Jeremy, what do you say we do this? We've got a few minutes left, and we haven't heard from our friends that are on the call with us. I guess if you want to, we've got the chat where I hope anyone can type if the message is to everyone. You could send it just to me if you want, to Robert Grime, or I think you all might have the ability. I hope you have the ability to unmute, or I can ask you to unmute if I'm doing this right. So Courtney, Justin, Mike, Robert, Sean, any thoughts, any questions, any concerns, any wisdom to share with us about things that you're going through? And I don't know if you all are able to unmute. This is, again, my first time doing a webinar style. I think you all can type in the chat.
I may have put him to sleep, Robert.
No. No, this has been fun. This has motivated me. I think, Mike, you just unmuted.
Yeah. I think there's really good information. I appreciate it. I think personally at the school I'm at, I think more than just myself or the athletic department should see this. We should include the president. We should include the people in development. We should include the faculty. And what I'm going to do is, since this is being recorded, I'm going to try to share it with several other people that aren't necessarily just athletic type people, because it was really good information, I think.
Yeah, I think what we've seen is you have your people that are going to make the decision, right? Your steering committee, if you will. And then you have other committees and folks out underneath that that really can kind of help turn the dial up or turn the dial back or move some things around, but they still give you the big picture, knowing that, it's the athletic department, it's the president, it's the CFO. Those are the folks that are ultimately making the decision and responsible for the decision, as they should be. But everyone else gets a voice and helps build that vision and builds it builds trust.
The most successful administrators that I've seen when I was my years on campus were those that could sell a vision, but also knew when to dial back their scope of authority. Like, all right, this is now I know what I want to do, but now we're in an area of this discussion that is beyond, and I need to defer to my colleagues across campus, my friends in FM, my friends that are in a different part of the campus. And what that did is it let everyone feel a part of it and moving forward together, as opposed to just being this office's program and everyone else is just hitching on. It felt like something that was for campus, that was a collective effort. And boy, it changed the dynamic, and it made it much more a much more functional working group.
Yeah.
And I would say,
go ahead, John.
I would say also it's really important, when possible, to create financial models that will show the viability of your expansion. Why are we, because inevitably we're going to get questions from people on the other side of campus saying, well, why are we building this baseball field? Why are we building this gym? We can show them now a financial model that can, now they can buy.
What do they call that? Return on investment, right?
Yeah, ROI.
Yeah, ROI. Great. Sean, that's awesome. That's great.
Oh, I'm back. I don't know if you lost me there for a sec.
We
Oh,
did.
I think we got you, bud.
Yeah, but I just think, showing that the viability of it will help get the faculty, maybe those administrators, maybe that are in other areas that are not on board necessarily hardcore with athletics, to where they can say, oh, wow, this really does make financial sense. Even putting it in a P&L form, I think can really be helpful.
Thank you, Sean. That's great. And I saw something Courtney just typed, and it goes right in with what Jeremy was saying about it's difficult conversation, but being able to be upfront with your possible boosters, your donors, about the limits of what you can and can't give. She mentions, for those of you that don't see it, if admin is not on the same page, for example, allowing donors to contribute to needed areas of athletics, it can make things very difficult. And you're right. It's important to get all that laid out first before you engage. So Courtney, great. Thank you. Jeremy, I see about 7 minutes remaining. I want to be respectful of everyone's time, and I apologize for a Sunday, but in 26 years in athletics, the one time that is usually available for most of our colleagues is Sunday evenings. So again, the speaker series, just so you all know, the speaker series, this is its pilot year. We're trying it. It's going to be every year, hopefully in September, October, November, February, March, April. So 6 sessions. The first Sunday of the month is going to be something administrative facing, right? So ADs or FARs or athletic trainers or CCLs, campus character liaisons. First Sunday. Second Sunday, student facing. So for example, this coming Sunday is going to be an encore presentation of student athlete mental health. November 7th, for the administrators, it's going to be leading student athletes to be aware of physical health and guiding them through recovery. We're going to have our friends from USCA and from Henry Schein get together and present. It's even going to be a continuing education unit available for our athletic trainers. But it's for anyone that's in a role that might impact student health or recovery. The next Sunday is November 14th, and that's going to be about, for student athletes, we're going to have a real dynamic speaker named Jonathan Jones, former student athlete. He's going to talk about how they can find their core values, how to go down the right path, because Jonathan went down a few wrong paths. And he's going to let them learn from his wisdom and his mistakes, learning their own core values and how to grow their voice. So again, this is going to be fun. Jeremy and I are going to type up the notes this next week and get them out to you all. It is being recorded. I've got to figure out how to move that over to YouTube or whatnot. But let's wrap this up with Jeremy's parting words for us. And please remember, our contact info is going to be on the notes that we send out. So again, we've got Jeremy's cell phone. Again, not a sales pitch, just there as a colleague that's been in your shoes before. His number right now coming online, 719-250-0699. And my number coming on, if you want to reach out to me, if you have any other topics that you might want us to address, we can find someone to come speak like Jeremy did for a different topic. Please let us know. May have to save on Google Drive. That will help me. That will help me a lot. But here is my number, 573-587-2137. And I was on campus for years. I know drama doesn't just happen between 8 and 5. So reach out anytime. Text me is probably better than voicemail. Text that number. Here it comes. 37. And I'll get back to you with, I could use any of your feedback. We're going to try to send out a survey after this to constructively critique us as harshly as you can, please, to let us know how to make this better as we learn. And if you have anyone on campus that is a wizard at hosting webinars, have them reach out, because I'm willing to learn. Jeremy, wrapping up the evening, what do you have for us, my friend?
Yeah. Well, first, just thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate your guys' time. I know what it's like. I know the heartache. I know the hoops you have to jump through. Sometimes they have fire on them. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's a high hurdle. Sometimes it's an intermediate hurdle. But so I know those pains and those struggles. So if I can help in any way, shape, or form, just to bounce off an idea or whatever, shoot me a call or give me a call. And I think when you sit down on your campus and you look at it big picture, I would just encourage you to put every big dream you possibly have down on paper. It's kind of the fundraising approach, or you think, when your kids ask you for money, right? Hey, Dad, can I have a 20? Well, if they only ask for a 20, you're only giving them a 20. You're not going to give them 100, right? So it's the same with fundraising. It's the same with these facility plans. You got to pick your bat up and you got to swing as hard as you can and get that stuff flushed out and build those big visions, because that's where the excitement comes from. That's where your boosters are going to get excited. That's where campus folks are going to get excited, believe it or not. So go big or go bigger. That's the way to do it. So thank you again. And I greatly appreciate your time.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you, Robert.